A millionaire discovers that a poor nanny donated blood to save his 7-year-old son and takes an unexpected action. Subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. The early morning of March in New Orleans seemed to carry the weight of humidity when screams echoed through the 3-story colonial house in downtown. The century-old walls, which had witnessed so many stories, were now the stage for a drama that would make any parent lose their mind. David Johnson, a renowned art restorer recognized throughout the South, was running through the polished wooden corridors carrying his daughter Emily, who was only 7 years old. "My God! My God!" he shouted as the girl remained unconscious. Her curly hair stuck to her sweaty face, her lips growing paler. The blood flowing from a head injury had left a red trail down the colonial staircase that Emily had fallen down just minutes before. David was a 42-year-old man, tall and thin, with graying hair at the temples that betrayed the stress of someone who dealt daily with the pressure of restoring valuable works. His brown eyes, usually calm and analytical, essential qualities for his meticulous work with 17th and 18th century paintings, now expressed pure panic. He was still wearing the navy blue silk robe he had used to sleep, and his bare feet stumbled on the oriental rugs scattered throughout the house. "Sarah! Sarah! For God's sake!" he yelled, calling his wife who was rushing behind him trying to put on a sandal while holding her phone in one hand, frantically dialing EMS. Sarah Johnson, an elegant 38-year-old woman, a respected art dealer in New Orleans cultural circles, had a distraught expression on her face. Her blonde hair, always impeccably styled for the social events she attended, was disheveled, and her white silk nightgown was stained with her daughter's blood. "The EMS is on the way, David. They said to stay calm," she shouted, but her voice trembled uncontrollably. "My daughter, my dear daughter." It was in that moment of absolute chaos that a figure stood out in the dim corridor. Maria Lopez, the nanny hired just 4 months ago, appeared as a serene presence amid the storm. She was a 45-year-old woman of average height, with black hair tied in a simple bun and dark eyes that conveyed an almost supernatural calm. Her brown skin had the typical tone of the southern region, and her calloused hands showed the experience of someone who had always cared for others. Even though it was her day off, Maria had stayed at the house because Emily had a slight fever the day before. She wore a simple white cotton t-shirt and faded jeans, but her posture was that of someone who knew exactly what to do. "Mr. David, let me see her," said Maria in a firm but gentle voice, extending her arms. Her experienced eyes quickly assessed the girl's condition. "She's breathing well. That's a good sign. Let's go to the hospital now, but keep her head like this, okay?" she instructed, showing how to position Emily to avoid sudden movements in her neck. David, known for his natural distrust, a characteristic that had made him one of the best restorers in the country, always questioning the authenticity of the works he received, felt a strange sense of security in the presence of the nanny. There was something in the way she touched Emily, with a technical delicacy that suggested much more than simple experience as a caregiver. St. Michael's Hospital, located on Maple Avenue, received emergencies 24 hours a day, and it was there that the ambulance headed, cutting through the still light traffic of the early New Orleans morning. The streets, usually busy until late hours, were emptier at that time, allowing them to reach the hospital quickly. In the emergency room, with its white walls and the characteristic smell of disinfectant, the attending physician, Dr. Michael Smith, an experienced man of about 50 years, examined Emily with the expertise of someone who had seen many similar cases. "The girl has a cranial trauma," he explained to the parents, adjusting his glasses as he analyzed the X-rays he had just received. "Fortunately, there are no signs of severe fractures, but she has lost a lot of blood. The problem is that she has a very rare blood type, Rh-null. Did you know that?" David and Sarah exchanged stunned glances. "No, we never did those detailed tests," Sarah replied, her voice choked. "It's known as golden blood," the doctor continued with a serious expression. "Fewer than 50 people in the world have this type. We need to find a compatible donor urgently, or—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. It was then that Maria, who had remained silently in a corner of the room, approached the nursing station. Without drama, without making a fuss, she simply said, "Doctor, I would like to take the compatibility test." Dr. Smith looked at her intrigued. "Ma'am, the probability is extremely low. Even so, doctor. Please. While they awaited the results of Maria's tests, David watched the nanny with growing curiosity. How could a simple woman, earning a modest salary caring for his daughter, demonstrate such serenity in such a desperate situation? And why had she offered for the test without hesitation, even knowing the risks? 20 minutes later, which felt like an eternity, the doctor returned with an expression of absolute astonishment. It's impossible, but it's true. She is compatible. It's like finding a diamond on a beach. Maria simply nodded, as if she already knew. Doctor, take as much as you need. And if you need more later, I'll come back. At that moment, as he saw the nanny being prepared for the donation, David Johnson had his first inkling that there was much more to that woman than met the eye. The following weeks after the accident completely transformed the routine of the colonial house in downtown. Emily had survived thanks to the transfusion, but her recovery would be slow and delicate. What impressed David the most, however, was the extraordinary way Maria conducted the care. With the girl, the house, built in the 18th century, had 3 floors connected by a solid wooden staircase that had now become a symbol of trauma. The stone and lime walls, painted in colonial yellow tones, seemed to silently observe the transformation occurring within its rooms. Emily's room, on the 2nd floor, had become a sort of operations center where Maria applied knowledge that left the whole family intrigued. Maria, where did you learn this? Sarah asked on a sunny morning, watching the caregiver prepare a warm bath with bay leaves and chamomile for Emily. The fragrant steam rose from the imported marble bathroom, creating a fascinating contrast between the luxury of the house and the simplicity of traditional methods. Maria smiled discreetly as she tested the water temperature with the back of her hand. My grandmother was a midwife back in a small town, Mrs. Sarah. She used to say that nature has a remedy for everything. We just need to know where to look. David, who was watching from the bathroom door, furrowed his brow. His suspicious nature, developed over years of dealing with art forgeries, began to awaken. Midwives from the countryside didn't teach such precise physiotherapy techniques as those Maria applied to Emily. The massages she gave the girl followed specific points that seemed to have a solid scientific basis. And these massages? Did you also learn those from your grandmother? He insisted, crossing his arms over his chest. David wore a light blue dress shirt. He always dressed well, even at home, a habit of someone who frequented museums and galleries constantly. I learned a little here, a little there, Mr. David, Maria replied, avoiding direct eye contact with him. The important thing is that Emily is getting better, right? And she truly was. Emily, who initially experienced constant headaches and difficulty concentrating, was showing remarkable progress. Her rosy cheeks were regaining color, and she could now sit up in bed to listen to the stories Maria told. Once upon a time, there was an African princess who came to Brazil on a ship, Maria narrated one afternoon, sitting in the red velvet armchair next to Emily's bed. She brought magical seeds in her luggage that could heal any wound. Emily listened with bright eyes, completely mesmerized. And then, Aunt Maria, what happened to the seeds? She planted them all here in Louisiana, my dear. That's why our land has such healing power. David observed these storytelling sessions from the hallway, always intrigued. Maria had a unique way of entertaining Emily, blending African legends with knowledge of medicinal plants in a way that seemed almost professional. It was during the 3rd week of recovery that David's suspicion reached its peak. He was in his office on the 1st floor of the house, a space filled with art books, professional magnifying glasses, and works in the process of restoration, when he decided to take an action that would change everything. The office was his personal sanctuary. The walls were lined with mahogany bookshelves housing hundreds of books on restoration techniques, the history of American art, and catalogs from international museums. An antique rosewood table occupied the center of the room, always covered with photographs of artworks, technical reports, and magnifying glasses of different strengths. It was there that David unraveled the secrets of the paintings he received, determining their authenticity and historical value. Hello, Richard. It's David Johnson, he said on the phone, dialing an old acquaintance. I need to hire your services. A discreet investigation. Richard Parker was a private investigator who had previously worked for David on cases involving suspicious artworks. A short and stocky man, 48 years old, With a graying mustache and the ability to blend into any environment, Richard had built a solid reputation in New Orleans investigating everything from marital infidelity to corporate fraud. "What kind of investigation, David?" Richard asked from the other end of the line. "I want you to find out everything about our caregiver, Maria Lopez. She has been living here for 4 months, but something doesn't add up," David explained, lowering his voice even though he was alone in the office. "Suspicions of theft? No, nothing like that. It's the opposite. She saved my daughter by donating blood, has medical knowledge that doesn't make sense for a simple caregiver, and I don't know, Richard. My instinct tells me there's much more to this story." "Got it. Give me her details, and I'll have a complete report in a week." As David organized the information he had about Maria, which was surprisingly little, Sarah was chatting with friends on the terrace of the house. The terrace, with a privileged view of the bay, was where she usually hosted her high society friends for afternoon teas. "Ladies, you have no idea," Sarah said to a group of 4 elegantly dressed women, all wives of businessmen and art collectors. "This caregiver is a walking enigma." "What do you mean, dear?" asked Helen Johnson, the wife of one of the largest cocoa exporters in Louisiana, adjusting her pearl necklace while sipping chamomile tea. "She prepares home remedies that work better than the pediatricians, knows massages I've only seen in expensive spas, and Emily is recovering in a miraculous way," Sarah explained, gesturing enthusiastically. "Just yesterday, she made a tea for my migraine that made me feel brand new in 5 minutes." "Do you think she might have studied medicine?" suggested Maria Thompson, the wife of a retired judge, known for her curiosity about others' lives. "It's possible, but why would a former doctor be working as a caregiver earning minimum wage?" Sarah inquired, frowning. What none of them knew was that Maria, on the other side of the glass door leading to the terrace, had heard the entire conversation. She stopped sweeping the outdoor porch and stood still for a few seconds, gripping the broom handle tightly. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Maria headed to the small maid's room on the 3rd floor of the house. It was a simple environment, with a single bed, a small wardrobe, and a window overlooking the back of the property. He sat on the bed and picked up his phone, dialing a number with trembling fingers. "Hi, Mom," said a young voice on the other end of the line. "Hi, my son. How was class today?" "It was good, Mom. The professor said my grades in anatomy are the best in the class," replied Jake, the 19-year-old son studying his first semester of nursing at a private university in New Orleans, fully supported by his mother's work. "That's great, my love. Keep working hard." "Mom, are you okay? Your voice sounds strange." Maria looked out the window at the distant city lights twinkling. "I'm fine, son. It's just fatigue." But it wasn't just fatigue. It was the weight of a secret she had been carrying for 5 years, since she left small town. A secret that, if discovered, could change everything, for better or worse. The first report from Richard Parker landed in David's hands on a cloudy April morning, exactly 1 week after his hiring. David was in his office, carefully restoring a 19th-century painting depicting the port of New Orleans, when the investigator knocked on the door of the colonial house. "David, you need to sit down before you read this," said Richard, a man who rarely showed surprise, but whose eyes betrayed that he had discovered something extraordinary. He wore a simple gray suit and carried a worn brown leather briefcase. David set aside the delicate brushes he was using to remove old varnishes and settled into the English leather armchair behind his desk. "What's up, Richard? What did you find?" "Maria Lopez is not just a caregiver," Richard began, opening the briefcase and pulling out several printed sheets. "She is a nurse graduated from the Federal University of Louisiana with a postgraduate degree in integrative therapies, and she worked for 8 years at the General Hospital of small town." David felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "Nurse? Why the hell would she be working as a caregiver here?" "That's where it gets interesting," Richard continued, flipping through the documents. In 2019, she saved the life of a newborn by applying an herbal treatment not approved by the hospital. The child was given up on. The doctors had given up, but she used a combination of herbs that brought the child back. And the state nursing board suspended her for 2 years for practicing without a license. They said she practiced medicine without authorization, even though she saved a life. David stood up abruptly, walking to the window overlooking the inner courtyard of the house. Down below, He could see Maria playing with Emily in the garden, teaching the girl to identify medicinal plants. Emily was laughing, fully recovered, while holding a sprig of lemon balm. "There's more," Richard said. "She moved to New Orleans 5 years ago with her son, who is now in his first year of nursing. She lives in a rented house in the Garden District, works as a caregiver during the day and a cleaner at night in downtown businesses, all to pay for her son's education. Why didn't she go back to working as a nurse?" The suspension ended 3 years ago, but it seems she lost confidence in the system. According to my sources, she continues to study on her own, taking online courses in integrative medicine, but she doesn't want to submit to the rules of hospitals anymore. David felt overwhelmed by a mix of admiration and guilt. Admiration for Maria's dedication and knowledge, guilt for doubting her intentions. "Richard, I need to go to where she lives." "David, be careful not to create an awkward situation. She might feel invaded." But David had already made up his mind. That afternoon, he took his black BMW and headed to the Garden District, one of the most populous areas of New Orleans, known for its rich Afro-American culture and the harmonious coexistence of social classes. The house where Maria lived was on a narrow, well-kept street, painted light blue, with a small porch protected by white railings. What caught David's attention the most was the porch. It looked like a true open-air botanical laboratory. Dozens of clay pots of various sizes housed plants David had never seen together. There were Brazilian pepper, chamomile, boldo, lemon balm, lemongrass, aloe vera, and many others he couldn't identify. All perfectly organized and cared for, with small labels identifying the scientific name and medicinal properties of each. David knocked on the door and waited. When Maria opened, wearing a simple apron over a white blouse, her expression changed immediately from surprise to concern. "Mr. David, is something wrong with Emily?" she asked, alarmed. No. Emily is fine. I need to talk to you." Maria invited him in, visibly nervous. The house was simple but impeccably clean and organized. The small living room had a two-seater sofa with a floral cover, a lightwood coffee table, and a shelf full of books. David couldn't hide his surprise at seeing the titles: Clinical Pharmacology, Brazilian Phytotherapy, Integrative Medicine in Pediatrics, Medicinal Plants of the Northeast. "Mr. David, please sit here," Maria said, indicating the sofa. "Can I bring you some coffee? Some water?" "Thank you, but that's not necessary." David sat down and looked directly into her eyes. "Maria, I know you're a nurse." The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Maria lowered her eyes and sat at the other end of the sofa, her hands clasped in her lap. "Who told you that?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I hired an investigator." "I'm sorry, I know it seems invasive, but you suspected me from the beginning," she completed, with a tone that mixed sadness and resignation. "I noticed. You always looked at me with that gaze of someone trying to uncover something." David felt terrible. "Maria, you have to understand my position. A caregiver who shows. Maria had advanced medical knowledge that saved my daughter by donating rare blood, preparing treatments that worked better than prescribed medications. Any parent would be intrigued. And now that you know the truth, are you going to fire me?" The question caught David off guard. "Fire you? Why?" "Because I lied on my resume. I said I was just a caregiver when in fact I'm a nurse. I omitted my training because I didn't want to explain why I no longer work in hospitals." It was at that moment that a young man entered the room. Jake Thompson, 19, was a male version of Maria, the same brown skin, the same expressive eyes, but with the vibrant energy of youth. He wore his nursing school uniform and carried a backpack full of books. "Mom, I'm home," he said, but stopped when he saw David. "Good afternoon, sir." "Jake, this is David, Sophia's father," Maria introduced. The young man smiled broadly and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, Mr. David. My mom talks about Sophia every day. She adores that girl." David shook the young man's hand, impressed by his firmness and politeness. "The pleasure is mine, Jake. Your mother is a very special person." "Yes, sir. She is my hero," Jake said with genuine pride. "She works day and night to keep me in college. One day I will repay all of this." "Jake, go study in your room," Maria requested, clearly embarrassed. "You don't have to, Mom. I want to hear this conversation," the young man said, sitting in a nearby chair. If it's about your work, it concerns me too. David looked at mother and son, seeing for the first time the dynamic between them. The love and mutual respect were evident, but so was the determination of two people fighting together against difficulties. Maria, David finally said, I didn't come here to confront you. I came to understand. And now that I understand, I have a proposal to make. Mother and son exchanged glances, expectant. I want you to go back to work as a nurse. Officially. I can help you get a position in a private hospital. I can. No, Maria interrupted firmly. Thank you, Mr. David, but I don't want your charity. It's not charity, Maria. It's recognition. You saved my daughter. Not just with the blood, but with your care, your knowledge, your dedication. Jake leaned forward. Mom, maybe this is the chance you've been waiting for. But Maria shook her head. Mr. David, you don't understand. I don't want to work in hospitals anymore. I don't want to submit to protocols that prevent saving lives. I prefer to care for people the way I care for Sophia, using everything I know, without bureaucracy. David realized there was much more complexity to this woman than he had imagined, and that perhaps the solution was not as simple as he thought. In the weeks following David's visit to Maria's home, a strange atmosphere settled in the colonial house in downtown. David had shared his discoveries with Sarah, who was torn between admiration for the caregiver and the feeling of having been deceived. David, how could she be a nurse and not tell us? Sarah questioned one morning while they had breakfast on the small terrace overlooking the inner courtyard. The sun filtered through the leaves of the century-old mango tree growing in the center of the yard, casting dancing shadows on the cast-iron table where they were seated. She had her reasons, Sarah. If you knew her story. David stirred his coffee absent-mindedly, watching through the window as Maria played with Sophia in the garden. The girl had fully recovered and was running among the ornamental plants, laughing as Maria pretended to chase her. But it's a matter of trust, David. How can we trust someone who omitted such important information? Sarah, at 38, was a woman accustomed to transparency in social and professional relationships. As an art dealer, she dealt daily with million-dollar contracts and had developed an almost obsessive need for honesty in all transactions. Her blonde hair was tied back in an elegant ponytail, and she wore a patterned dress that accentuated her always upright and confident posture. Look how she is with Sophia, David said, pointing to the garden. Do you see any malice there? Any hidden agenda? At that moment, they saw Maria teaching Sophia how to create a small medicinal garden in an improvised bed. The girl, with curly hair and wearing a yellow floral dress, held a mint seedling while Maria patiently explained how to plant it. Look, Sophia, mint likes moist soil, but not soggy, Maria said, kneeling beside the girl. And it grows quickly, you see? In a month you'll be able to harvest the leaves to make tea. And if I plant a lot, can I give some to my friends at school? Sophia asked, her eyes shining with curiosity. Of course you can, my dear. Healing plants are meant to be shared. David felt his heart tighten watching the scene. Sophia had become more curious, more connected to nature, more observant since Maria arrived at the house. The girl, who used to spend hours watching television or playing video games, now preferred to explore the garden and learn about plants. I'm going to talk to her today, David decided, getting up from the table. I will make it clear that we want to help her, but without pressure. When he went down to the garden, David found Maria organizing the gardening tools in a small wooden box. Sophia had gone inside to take a bath, and the caregiver was alone, lost in her thoughts. Maria, can we talk? She looked up, and David noticed an expression of fatigue he hadn't seen before. Of course, Mr. David. They sat on a stone bench under the shade of the mango tree. The scent of jasmine flowers growing along the fence mingled with the breeze coming from the Gulf of Mexico, creating an almost magical atmosphere in the small green oasis in the middle of the historic center of New Orleans. Maria, I've thought a lot about our conversation last week, David began, and I want you to know that I don't judge your choices. On the contrary, I admire them. Mr. Johnson, you don't need to. Let me finish, please. David turned to face her directly. You could have chosen an easier path. You could have gone back to hospitals, followed the protocols, earned a better salary. But you chose your freedom. You chose to do what you believe is right. Maria lowered her eyes. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. I see my son struggling so much in college. I see the hardships we go through, and I think maybe I should have swallowed my pride. Pride. David frowned. Maria, what you did was not pride. It was courage. Courage doesn't pay the bills, Mr. Johnson. It was at that moment that David realized he had misinterpreted Maria's resistance. It wasn't just a matter of principles, it was also a practical issue. She was truly struggling financially. Maria, let me be direct. How much do you earn here with us, combined with your cleaning job? She hesitated before answering. About 2 minimum wages. And how much do Tiago's studies cost? The college tuition is $800, plus books, transportation, food, around $1,200 a month. David did the math in his head. Maria spent more than half of her income just on her son's education, leaving very little for her own needs. What if I made a different proposal? David said. What if, instead of trying to convince you to go back to hospitals, I officially recognized your knowledge right here? What do you mean? How about you become our family health consultant? With a decent salary, the freedom to apply your knowledge, and you would also help other families? Maria looked at him suspiciously. Mr. Johnson, that sounds like disguised charity. It's not charity, Maria. It's business. David got excited about the idea forming. Look, you know a lot about medicinal plants. You have nursing knowledge. You understand integrative therapies. Imagine how many wealthy families in New Orleans would pay well for those services. What exactly are you talking about? About you setting up an integrative medicine practice. I can finance the startup. You pay me back when you start making a profit. No rush, no interest. Maria abruptly stood up from the bench, clearly agitated. Mr. Johnson, stop. Stop with this. Why? It's a good idea. Because I don't want to owe anything to anyone, she exploded, with an intensity that surprised David. You don't understand? I already owe you too much. You saved my life when you gave me this job, and now you want me to accept more. David fell silent, processing Maria's emotional outburst. There was pain in her voice, a deep pain that went beyond financial difficulties. Maria, I'm sorry if I seemed intrusive. I just wanted. You wanted to help, I know. She sat down again, running her hands over her face. But you don't understand how humiliating it is to need help from others all the time. But accepting help isn't a sign of weakness. It is for me. Maria looked at her own hands, calloused from work. Mr. Johnson, I've been through a lot in life. I lost my husband when Tiago was 10. I was kicked out of the hospital where I worked for doing what I thought was right. I had to start over in a new city. The only thing that keeps me standing is knowing that I'm earning everything through my own effort. David began to understand. For Maria, accepting his help would mean admitting that she couldn't succeed on her own. And for a woman who had faced so many adversities, that admission would be devastating. I understand, he finally said. But what if it wasn't help? What if it was an investment? What's the difference? With help, you owe me. With an investment, we become partners. Maria looked at him with renewed curiosity. Partners. You bring the knowledge, I bring the capital. We split the profits 50-50. You would own your own business, make your own decisions, but you would have financial support to start. For the first time since the conversation began, David saw a spark of interest in Maria's eyes. But he also saw fear. Mr. Johnson, this is too risky for you. What if it goes wrong? Maria, you saved my daughter. If it goes wrong, at least we tried. At that moment, Emily appeared in the kitchen doorway, calling for Maria. Aunt Maria, come see. I planted a little sunflower seed in the pot in my room. Maria smiled, and David realized that genuine smile was exactly the response he needed to hear. David's proposal echoed in Maria's mind for days. Meanwhile, the routine of the colonial house continued, but now with an underlying tension that everyone could feel. Emily, with her sharp perception as a child, noticed the whispered conversations between her parents and the thoughtful expression that Maria carried while doing her tasks. It was on a rainy Thursday in May that Sarah organized one of her traditional luncheons for the wives of high society in New Orleans. The house had been carefully prepared. The French porcelain dishes were set on the mahogany dining table, fresh flowers from the garden decorated every room, and the menu was planned to impress. Girls, you need to try this gumbo, Sarah said, serving her 5 guests in the elegant dining room. The walls covered in French wallpaper and shades of gold created a sophisticated atmosphere, enhanced by the colonial paintings that David had carefully restored over the years. Seated at the table were Helen Johnson, wife of the cocoa exporter; Maria Thompson, wife of the retired judge; Lisa Brown, married to one of the biggest businessmen in the petrochemical sector; Fiona Carter, wife of a renowned cardiologist; and Isabella Green, wife of an influential state legislator. "Sarah, dear, who made this?" "It's divine," praised Helen, delicately tasting the dish while adjusting her diamond necklace. "It was our caregiver, Maria. She has a natural talent for authentic Louisiana cuisine." "Oh yes, the mysterious caregiver you mentioned," said Maria, with that tone of curious intrigue. "The social gatherings of the elite were characterized by a certain disguise. Have you discovered anything else about her?" Sarah hesitated for a moment, looking out the window where she could see Maria playing with Emily in the garden. The caregiver wore a simple white blouse and a navy blue skirt, contrasting with the sophisticated elegance of the women at the table. "Well, we found out that she is a trained nurse," revealed Sarah, causing a murmur of surprise among her friends. "A nurse?" exclaimed Lisa, dropping her fork. "A nurse working as a caregiver? That's very strange, Sarah." "That's exactly what I thought," agreed Sarah. "David investigated and found out that she had issues with the nursing board. It seems she administered unauthorized treatments." "My God," whispered Fiona, the cardiologist's wife, with a scandalized expression. "Sarah, aren't you worried about having someone like that taking care of Emily?" "No, Fiona. She literally saved our daughter. She donated rare blood and cared for her during recovery with a dedication we've never seen before." "But still," interjected Isabella, with the authoritative tone of someone used to political circles, "a person who breaks professional rules once may break them again. You need to think about your family's safety." Maria leaned over the table, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Girls, you know how those people from the small towns are? They have strange beliefs, do charms, believe in folk healing." "Maria," protested Sarah, genuinely shocked. "Maria is not those people. She is a qualified professional who chose a different path." "Sarah, dear," said Helen with a condescending smile, "you are very generous, but you need to be realistic. David is a successful man. You have a social position to maintain. You can't afford to associate your name with questionable people." "Questionable?" Sarah's voice rose a pitch, drawing worried looks from her friends. "Calm down, Sarah." Letitia tried to soothe her. "What Helen means is that, regardless of this woman's personal qualities, social perception matters. Imagine if it reaches David's clients that he has someone with professional issues at home. Or imagine," added Isabella with a mischievous smile, "if someone finds out that David is planning to invest in her business. People will talk, Sarah. They'll say he's having an affair." The silence that followed was piercing. Sarah paled, and the other women exchanged meaningful glances, as if they had finally reached the point they wanted. "Isabella, how did you know about David's plans?" Sarah asked, her voice controlled but tense. "Dear, New Orleans is a small city in our circles. Things come to our ears," Isabella replied vaguely, fiddling with her salad. What Sarah didn't know was that just outside the kitchen door, Maria had heard the entire conversation while washing the dishes. Her hands trembled slightly as she scrubbed a plate, and she had to lean against the sink for a moment to regain her balance. "Girls," said Helen, taking on the tone of someone giving wise advice, "you are our family here. We just want to protect you. This situation with the caregiver may seem noble now, but it could become a problem in the future." "What kind of problem?" Sarah asked, although she already feared the answer. "Imagine if she starts making demands," suggested Maria. "If she knows you depend on her emotionally, she might start blackmailing you." "Or worse," added Fiona. "What if she's documenting everything that happens here? Recording conversations, photographing the house. These days, people will do anything for money." "You are being ridiculous," Sarah exploded, standing up from the table. "Maria is nothing like what you are insinuating." "Sarah, sit down," Helen requested firmly. "We understand that you are emotionally involved because she helped Emily, but you need to think with a cool head." Letitia seized the moment to deliver the final blow. "Dear, my husband mentioned that there are rumors at the club about David being very close to the caregiver. You know how these stories spread." Sarah felt as if she had been slapped. The commercial club was where David maintained many of his professional contacts. If rumors were circulating there, they could truly affect his business. "What exactly are they saying?" she asked, her voice almost inaudible. "That he is investing money in her." Isabella replied. That he spends a lot of time talking to her, that he has discovered secrets about her past. You know how men get when they feel like saviors of a woman. At that moment, Maria appeared in the dining room doorway carrying a platter with dessert. Her face was composed, but her hands trembled slightly. "Excuse me, Mrs. Sarah. I brought the cheesecake you requested." The silence in the room was absolute. All the women looked at Maria with a mix of embarrassment and curiosity, as if they were viewing a museum piece. "Thank you, Maria," said Sarah, avoiding looking directly at her. Maria served the dessert in silence, but Sarah noticed that her hands were more tremulous than usual. When she finished, the caregiver headed for the door, but stopped and turned. "Mrs. Sarah, when you finish lunch, I need to speak with you. It's important." After Maria left, Maria whispered, "See? She was listening to our conversation. I told you it was dangerous to have someone like that at home." But Sarah was no longer listening to her friends. Her heart was racing, and she knew that something had changed irreversibly that afternoon. When lunch ended and the guests left, Sarah found Maria in the garden, sitting on a bench under the mango tree. The caregiver had gathered her things in a small fiber bag, and Emily was beside her, crying. "Aunt Maria, why do you have to go?" the girl sobbed, clutching Maria's arm. "Maria," said Sarah, feeling her heart tighten, "we need to talk." "You don't need to, Mrs. Sarah," Maria replied, standing up with dignity. "I heard everything, and I understood that my presence here is causing problems for your family." "That's not it." "It is, Mrs. Sarah, and I don't want to be the cause of misunderstandings between you and Mr. David, or affect the business of your Mr. Johnson." Sarah felt torn between what she knew was right and the social pressure she had just faced. In that hesitation, Maria found her answer. "I already wrote a letter explaining everything. It's on the kitchen table." Maria bent down and hugged Emily. "You'll be okay, my dear. Keep taking care of the plants, all right?" And so, carrying her small suitcase and a weight in her heart, Maria Lopez left the colonial house in downtown, leaving behind not just a job, but a family she had learned to love. The colonial house in downtown had never seemed so silent. After Maria's departure, a palpable emptiness filled every room, as if a vital energy had been sucked out through the solid wood doors. Emily refused to eat, sitting for hours in the garden looking at the plants that Maria had taught her to care for, and cried every night asking for Aunt Maria. David came home that night to find Sarah sitting in the kitchen, holding a piece of paper with trembling hands. Tears silently streamed down her face, and she didn't even look up when her husband entered. "Sarah, what happened? Where's Maria?" David asked, looking around and immediately noticing the absence of the warm presence that used to fill the house. "She left," Sarah replied, her voice choked, extending the letter. "Read this." David took the yellowed piece of paper, the kind of plain paper Maria used for her notes on medicinal plants. The handwriting was careful, educated, revealing the training of someone who had studied, but laden with deep sadness. Asterisk, "Dear Johnson family, I write this letter with a heavy heart, but with the peace of mind that comes from doing the right thing. During these months living with you, I learned the true meaning of family love and dedication. Emily has become like a daughter to me, and all of you, a family I never thought I would have again. But today I understood that my presence here is bringing consequences that you do not deserve to face. I heard the conversations of Mrs. Sarah's friends, and I understood that my social condition and my past could harm the reputation you have worked so hard to build. Mr. Johnson, you offered me opportunities one will never forget. Your generosity in wanting to help me professionally shows the noble man you are. But I cannot accept that your kindness becomes a burden for your family. Mrs. Sarah, you have always treated me with respect, even when you discovered that I had omitted information about my background. I ask for forgiveness for not being completely honest from the start. I feared that knowing my past would change how you saw me. Emily, my dear girl, keep taking care of the garden plants. They will grow strong like you, and whenever you see them bloom, remember that the love we plant never dies. I leave this house taking with me the best memories of my life. You restored my faith in human kindness when I needed it most. Now it is time for me to follow my path without causing further disturbances in your lives. With all my love and gratitude, Maria Lopez P.S. In the fridge, I left enough natural remedies for Emily for a month. The instructions are taped to the door. If you need anything else for her health, you can reach out to me. I will always be available to help, even from a distance. David finished reading and remained silent for long minutes. His hands gripped the letter tightly, and Sarah could see the tension growing in his shoulders. What exactly happened today, Sarah? He finally asked, in a controlled voice she knew well. It was the voice he used when he was furious but trying to remain civilized. Sarah recounted everything. The lunch, the insinuations from her friends, the rumors at the club, the social pressures. As she spoke, she saw David's expression harden more and more. So you let a bunch of gossips decide who can or cannot work in our home. David exploded when she finished. David, it wasn't exactly like that. Wasn't it? Then explain to me how it was. He abruptly stood up from the chair, starting to pace back and forth in the kitchen. Maria saved our daughter, Sarah. She donated blood, cared for Emily with a dedication we have never seen. And you let her go because Helen Johnson and her friends are afraid that this taints our reputation? David, you don't understand the pressure. What pressure? David stopped pacing and looked directly at her. The pressure to be seen as a decent family that recognizes the value of a good person. The pressure to act with gratitude and justice. Sarah began to cry more intensely. They said it could affect your business, that people were talking about you and Maria, and you believed them? David's voice was heavy with disappointment. Sarah, you have known me for 15 years. Did you really think I would betray our family? No, of course not. But it was easier to sacrifice Maria than to face the gossip of high society. The silence that followed was broken by Emily, who appeared in the kitchen in her pajamas, her eyes red from crying. Daddy, why did Aunt Maria leave? The girl asked, running into her father's arms. David picked her up, feeling his heart shatter at the sight of his daughter's suffering. Daddy will bring her back, my love. Daddy promises. When? Tomorrow. Sarah looked at him alarmed. David, maybe we should think this through. Think about what, Sarah? David turned to her, still holding Emily. About how we will explain to our daughter that we let the person who saved her life leave because our wealthy friends disapproved. David, please don't turn this into a moral issue. But it is a moral issue, he exploded. It's about who we are as people, as a family. Maria has more dignity. Sophia began to cry again. I want Aunt Maria. She promised she would teach me how to make chamomile tea. David sat down again, cradling Emily in his lap. Look here, my love. Daddy made a big mistake. I let bad people influence our family's decisions. But Daddy will fix this. How? First, I will go get Aunt Maria and apologize. Then, I will make the proposal I promised her, a real partnership where she is recognized for her true worth. Sarah sat beside them, wiping her tears. David, what if she doesn't want to come back? What if she has lost trust in us? Then it will be our fault, he replied, looking directly into his wife's eyes. But at least we will have tried to do the right thing. That night, David could hardly sleep. He thought about Maria's letter, the dignity with which she had handled the situation, and how she protected the family even when wronged. At 5 a.m, he got up and went to the office. He turned on the computer and began drafting a detailed business plan. If he was going to offer a partnership to Maria, it had to be a serious, respectful proposal that truly recognized her value. Integrative Medicine Center Johnson and Lopez, he typed as the title of the document. A partnership between traditional knowledge and modern resources. At 7 a.m, when Sarah came down for coffee, she found David dressed in his best suit, holding a leather portfolio with documents. Where are you going so early? To get Maria, he replied, adjusting his tie. And this time, I won't accept no for an answer. David, wait. I want to go with you. He looked at her in surprise. Are you sure? I am. I made a mistake yesterday too. I let fear speak louder than my conscience. Sarah took a deep breath. Maria deserves an apology from me as well. And Emily? Emily is coming with us. After all, she is the one who suffered the most from this situation. An hour later, the three were in David's BMW, heading to the Garden District. Emily was in the back seat, clutching a small pot with a sunflower seedling she had planted, her welcome back gift for Maria. Daddy, what if Aunt Maria is too sad to forgive us? Emily asked as they observed the bustling neighborhood streets. Then we will show her that we have learned from our mistakes, my love, David replied. And that a real family never gives up on the people they love. When they stopped in front of the small blue house, David took a deep breath. He knew that the next few minutes would define not only Maria's future, but also the kind of family they truly were. The small blue house in the Garden District looked even more modest under the golden morning light. David, Sarah, and Emily walked slowly along the cobblestone sidewalk, each carrying the weight of their own expectations and fears. The aroma of medicinal plants on the porch reached them, mixed with the smell of fresh coffee coming from one of the neighboring houses. David gently knocked on the green-painted wooden door. Inside, they heard shuffling footsteps, followed by Jake's voice. "Who is it?" "It's David Johnson. I need to speak with your mother." The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Finally, the door opened, revealing Jake with a mixed expression of surprise and distrust. The young man wore a simple t-shirt and denim shorts, but his eyes showed the early maturity of someone who had grown up helping his mother face challenges. "Mr. Johnson," he said, not hiding the coldness in his voice. "My mother is not receiving visitors." "Jake, please," Sarah intervened, stepping forward. "We came to apologize. We made a terrible mistake." The young man looked at Emily, who was hiding behind her father's legs, tightly holding her little pot with the sunflower seedling. His expression softened slightly upon seeing the girl. "Emily," he said, crouching down to her level. "How are you, little one?" "Sad," Emily replied with the typical honesty of children. "I want to talk to Aunt Maria. I brought her a present." Jake sighed and looked at Emily's parents. "She cried all night. Couldn't sleep. She's in the backyard, taking care of the plants." "Can we see her?" David asked. After a moment of hesitation, Jake invited them in. The small living room seemed even cozier in the morning light, and David noticed details he had missed on his previous visit. Photographs of Jake in school uniform scattered on the shelf, a framed high school diploma on the wall, and carefully organized books on herbal medicine. "Wait here," Jake said. "I'll go get her." Minutes later, Maria appeared at the door leading to the backyard. She wore a simple floral cotton dress and had her hair tied up with a blue scarf. Her eyes were swollen, evidence of a night of tears, but her posture maintained the dignity that characterized her. "Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Johnson," she said, her voice steady. "I didn't expect to see you here." Emily broke free from her father's hands and ran to Maria. "Aunt Maria, I brought you a present." She extended the pot with the sunflower seedling. "It's to remind you of me when I'm not around." Maria knelt down and hugged the girl, unable to hold back her tears. "Thank you, my dear. It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received." David stepped forward, taking the leather portfolio from his bag. "Maria, I came here to apologize and to make a serious proposal." "Mr. Johnson, you don't have to." "I do." He opened the portfolio and pulled out a printed document. "I spent the night preparing this. It's a complete business plan for our partnership." Maria looked at the paper without taking it. "Mr. Johnson, I appreciate it, but—" "Let me explain before you refuse," David insisted. "It's not charity. It's a professional acknowledgement of your worth." Sarah moved closer, with the tears welled up in her eyes. "Maria, I need to ask for forgiveness. Yesterday, I let the opinions of petty people influence my decisions. I betrayed the trust you placed in our family." "Mrs. Johnson, you didn't do anything wrong." "I did," Sarah interrupted, her voice firm. "I let the fear of others' opinions be more important than doing what is right. And that is unforgivable." Jake, who had been watching everything in silence, approached his mother. "Mom, at least listen to what they have to say." Maria looked at her son, then at Emily, who was still hugging her, and finally at David and Sarah. "All right, let's sit down." They settled into the small room, Emily in Maria's lap, while David opened the document. "Integrative Medicine Center Johnson and Lopez," he read. "The idea is simple. You bring all your knowledge in medicinal plants, natural therapies, and nursing. I'll provide the initial capital and contacts. We split everything 50-50. "What kind of center would this be?" Maria asked, trying to hide her interest in her voice. "A place where families can access integrative treatments," Sarah explained, "combining traditional medicine with ancestral knowledge. You would be the technical director, making all decisions about treatments." "And where would it operate?" David smiled. "Remember the house for sale on Flower Street, near the Victory Corridor? 3 stories, a large garden, perfect for consultations and cultivating medicinal plants." Maria fell silent, processing the information. Jake leaned forward. Mom, this is exactly what you've always dreamed of. But it's too risky for you, Maria said, looking at David. What if it doesn't work out? What if people don't accept mixing traditional medicine with natural treatments? Maria, David said, New Orleans has one of the populations that believes most in natural medicine in the country. Moreover, the elite is increasingly interested in holistic treatments. It's a growing market. And what about the rumors? The gossip? Sarah took a deep breath. Last night, I called all the women who were at lunch. I told them exactly what I think about their attitudes. Some apologized, others, well, I found out who my true friends are. Mrs. Johnson, you didn't have to do that. I did. A person who saved my daughter deserves me to fight for her. Emily, who had been quiet until then, looked at Maria with her big expressive eyes. Aunt Maria, are you going to come back home? Emily, my dear, that's not my home. It is, the girl insisted. Home is where people love each other. And we love you. Emily's simple words echoed in the small room, touching the hearts of everyone present. Maria hugged her tighter, feeling the weight of the decision she needed to make. Mr. David, this proposal is very generous, she finally said. But I need guarantees. What kind of guarantees? First, I want total control over the treatments. No pressure to use only conventional medicine. Agreed. Second, if it goes wrong, I want to be able to withdraw from the partnership without owing anything. Also agreed. Third, I want Jake to be able to intern at the center when he graduates. If he wants to, of course. Jake smiled broadly. I want to, Mom. And fourth, Maria continued, her voice more firm. I want this decision to be ours as a family. I don't want you to do this out of guilt or obligation. David and Sarah exchanged glances. Sarah took her husband's hand and then extended the other to Maria. Maria, we want you back not out of guilt, but because we've realized our family isn't complete without you. And Emily needs Aunt Maria, David added, smiling at his daughter. Maria looked around the room, at Jake, who was watching her with hope, at Emily, who was hugging her with unconditional love, at David and Sarah, who were offering not just a professional opportunity, but a new chance for belonging. All right, she finally said, her voice choked with emotion. Let's try. Emily shouted with joy. Jake smiled proudly at his mother, and David felt that he was finally doing the right thing. But, Maria added, with a mischievous sparkle in her eyes, there's one final condition. What? David and Sarah asked in unison. I want Emily to be our first official patient. I'll teach her how to make all the natural remedies she wants to learn. Emily clapped her hands, excited. Can I learn to make chamomile tea? You can, my dear. And lemon balm, and boldo, and everything you want. At that moment, in the small room of the Blue House in the Garden District, a new family was forming. A family that transcended social classes and prejudices, united by love and mutual respect. 3 months after that emotional meeting in the Blue House, Flower Street, in the elegant neighborhood of the Victory Corridor, witnessed an extraordinary transformation. The colonial 3-story house that David had acquired for the Integrative Medicine Center Johnson and Lopez was unrecognizable. The facade, once peeling and abandoned, now displayed a fresh coat of light green and white paint, with restored wooden details showcasing David's meticulous work. A discreet bronze plaque at the entrance announced, Integrative Medicine Center, Holistic Care and Natural Therapies. Planters overflowed with carefully cultivated medicinal plants, creating a welcoming atmosphere that elegantly contrasted with the urban environment around it. In the backyard, Maria had created what she lovingly called her green pharmacy. Organized beds housed over 50 species of medicinal plants, from traditional ones like boldo and lemon balm to rarer varieties like holy thorn and stonebreaker. Small wooden signs identified each plant with its common name, scientific name, and main therapeutic properties. Mrs. Maria, are you sure that horsetail tea will really help with fluid retention? Asked Martha Wilson, a 65-year-old woman, wife of a textile businessman, as she observed the plants with genuine curiosity. Maria, wearing a white lab coat embroidered with leaves. Adaptees, Doralis Santos - Maria Lopez, Dr. Enrique Sampaio - Dr. Michael Smith, Dona Claudia - Mrs. Johnson, Tiago - Jake, Helena Magalhaes - Helen Johnson, Fernanda Costa - Fiona Carter, DRA. Ana Paula Dr. Anna Parker, Universidad Federal de Bahia State University of Louisiana. Maria smiled patiently, as if she had repeated this explanation several times a day. Mrs. Lopez, horsetail is a natural diuretic that has been used for centuries. But remember, it's a supplement to the treatment your doctor prescribed, not a replacement. And what about that one? Asked the client, pointing to a plant with tiny leaves. That's stonebreaker. Excellent for kidney and gallbladder issues. But before using anything, we need to do a complete consultation with you. I want to understand your entire health history. The first floor of the center had been transformed into cozy consultation rooms. Neutral-colored walls, light wooden furniture, plants in every corner, and soft lighting created an environment that immediately conveyed peace. Maria had insisted that each room have a window overlooking the garden, believing that visual contact with nature was a fundamental part of the healing process. On the second floor was the herbal medicine laboratory, where Maria carefully prepared extracts, tinctures, and personalized teas for each patient. The glass shelves housed dozens of labeled bottles, organized with the precision of a traditional pharmacy, but with the personal touch of someone who knew each plant individually. "Mom, Helen Johnson called wanting to schedule an appointment," announced Jake, entering the lab with a planner in hand. The young man, now in his third semester of nursing, interned at the center 3 times a week, learning in practice how to combine academic knowledge with his mother's traditional wisdom. Maria raised her eyebrows, surprised. "The same Helen Johnson who was at lunch that day," confirmed Jake. "It seems Mrs. Johnson spoke highly of our work to her. And what does she want?" "Chronic insomnia. She said she has tried all conventional medications and nothing works." Maria sighed, carefully mixing a tincture of valerian with passion flower. "Schedule her for next week. But make it clear that we don't perform miracles. We provide serious treatment." The third floor housed David's office, where he coordinated the administrative side of the center while continuing his restoration work. The walls displayed a fascinating mix: colonial artworks he had restored and photographs documenting the center's development, from the early days of renovation to the first consultations. "David, you need to see this," said Sarah, entering the room with a radiant smile on her face. She held a folder with newspaper clippings and printouts from websites. "There's an article about the center in the New Orleans Times, and look at the comments on social media." David stopped examining an 18th century painting and turned to his wife. In recent months, he had noticed a transformation in Sarah. She seemed lighter, more authentic, as if she had freed herself from the burden of maintaining social appearances. "Innovative Center in New Orleans combines tradition and modernity," David read aloud. "The partnership between renowned restorer David Johnson and therapist Maria Lopez has attracted patients from the middle and upper classes of New Orleans, interested in treatments that respect both science and ancestral wisdom." "And there's more," said Sarah, excited. 3 doctors have already reached out wanting to establish partnerships. Dr. Michael Smith, the one who treated Emily at the hospital, wants to refer patients with chronic issues. At that moment, Emily appeared at the door, wearing a little pink apron that Maria had specially made for her. The girl, now 8 years old, had become the center's official assistant, helping to water the plants and learning about the properties of each one. "Dad, Aunt Maria said I can help her make medicine for Fiona's cough," Emily announced, proud of her responsibility. "Really? And what are you going to use?" "Guaco syrup with honey," replied Emily, as if it were obvious. "The guaco loosens the phlegm, and the honey soothes the throat. Aunt Maria taught me." David smiled, impressed with the knowledge his daughter had acquired. Emily had not only learned about medicinal plants, but also developed a maturity and social awareness that made him deeply proud. "Emily, go tell Aunt Maria that I'll come down for our meeting in half an hour," David requested. Every Friday, David, Sarah, Maria, and Jake gathered to assess the week and plan improvements for the center. These meetings had become much more than professional gatherings. They were moments when the family they had built grew stronger. "How's the waiting list?" David asked when everyone gathered in the meeting room on the first floor. 3 weeks, Maria replied, checking her planner. "And I've increased the number of consultations per day. Maybe it's time to think about hiring someone else," suggested Sarah. "I already have someone in mind," Maria said with a mysterious smile. "Remember Dr. Anna Parker, That doctor who came to visit us last month? The one who works with integrative medicine? Jake asked. Exactly. She's interested in forming a partnership. Shared consultations, mutual referrals. We could offer an even more comprehensive service. David leaned back in his chair, observing the group gathered around the table. 6 months ago, he would have never imagined that his life could take such an unexpected and rewarding direction. There's one more thing, Maria said, with a serious expression. I received an invitation from the State University of Louisiana to give a lecture on integrative medicine for nursing students. Maria, that's wonderful, exclaimed Sarah. It's an important recognition, David agreed. Are you going to accept? I already accepted, Maria replied, smiling. And I asked Jake to accompany me. After all, he represents the new generation of professionals who will unite tradition and innovation. Jake looked visibly moved. Mom, you deserve it, son. Your teachers have already commented on how you stand out in practical classes. And now I know why. You learned in practice, here with us. David stood up and walked to the window overlooking the garden. Down below, he could see some patients chatting animatedly with Emily, who was explaining the properties of a rosemary plant. You know what impresses me the most about this whole story, he said, turning to the group. What? Asked Sarah. We thought we were saving Maria, offering her an opportunity. But in reality, she saved us. She taught us what really matters. Family, gratitude, purpose. Maria lowered her eyes, clearly moved. Mr. Johnson, it's true, Maria. You showed us that success is not measured just in money or social status. It's measured by how many lives you touch, by how much good you do in the world, and by how many plants you can make grow, added Emily, who had quietly entered the room. Everyone laughed, and Maria pulled the girl into a hug. That's right, my dear. And do you know what the most important plant we managed to grow is? What? Our family. At that moment, under the golden light of the late afternoon streaming through the windows of the center, they knew they had built something much greater than a successful business. They had created a legacy of love, respect, and transformation that would spread far beyond the walls of that colonial mansion on Flower Street. The winter of 2024 brought to New Orleans not only the characteristic rains of the season, but also the greatest challenge that the Johnson-Lopez family would face since the creation of the center. It was a gray July morning when Sarah received a call that would change everything. David, you need to come home now, she said on the phone, her voice trembling. It's about my pregnancy. David was at the center, supervising the installation of new equipment for the herbal medicine laboratory when he received the call. Within minutes, he was driving his BMW through the wet streets of New Orleans, his heart racing with worry. Sarah was 5 months pregnant with their second child, a pregnancy that had been planned and celebrated by the whole family. Emily could hardly contain her excitement to meet her little brother, and even Maria had prepared a special series of teas and natural treatments to accompany the pregnancy. When David arrived home, he found Sarah lying on the living room sofa, pale and visibly shaken. Dr. Mark Johnson, the obstetrician overseeing the pregnancy, was sitting in the armchair beside her, looking grave. David, the doctor began, today's test showed signs of severe preeclampsia. Sarah's blood pressure has skyrocketed, there is protein in her urine, and the baby is showing signs of fetal distress. David felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. What does that mean? It means we need to admit Sarah immediately and consider an early delivery. At 20 weeks, the chances of the baby's survival are. The doctor hesitated, clearly reluctant to finish the sentence. What are the options? David asked, sitting beside his wife and taking her hand. We can try to stabilize the blood pressure with medication and complete bed rest, but it's temporary. If it doesn't work, we'll have to perform an emergency cesarean. And the risks? For Sarah, seizures, stroke, organ failure. For the baby, extreme prematurity, severe respiratory problems, neurological damage, or death. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah began to cry silently, and David felt completely lost. It was at that moment that Emily walked into the room, returning from school. The girl, now 8.5 years old, had developed a keen sensitivity to reading the emotions of adults. What's happening? She asked, dropping her backpack on the floor when she saw all the serious faces. Emily, my love, David said, trying to control his voice. The baby in Mommy's belly is having a hard time. Is he going to be okay? We're doing everything we can. Emily approached Sarah and gently placed her hand on her belly. Mommy, where's Aunt Maria? She always knows what to do. It was as if a light bulb went off in David's mind. Dr. Mark, is there any contraindication for complementary treatments in this case? The doctor frowned. David, this is not the time for experiments. I'm not talking about experiments. I'm talking about Maria Lopez, our partner. She's a nurse specialized in integrative therapies and has experience with high-risk pregnancies. David, Sarah said weakly, call her. Please. An hour later, Maria arrived at the colonial house carrying a bag of materials that David had never seen before. She respectfully greeted Dr. Mark and asked for permission to examine Sarah. Doctor, may I check some acupressure points? And I would like to prepare a specific tea that may help stabilize the blood pressure. The doctor hesitated, but Maria's seriousness and competence impressed him. As long as it's something proven to be safe. Everything I'm going to use has scientific literature proving its safety during pregnancy, Maria assured, opening her bag and revealing carefully labeled bottles. Mulberry leaf to stabilize blood pressure, chamomile tea to reduce stress, and some breathing techniques I learned from experienced midwives. In the next 2 hours, the house transformed into a center for integrative care. Maria prepared specific teas, applied acupressure techniques that helped Sarah relax, and taught breathing exercises that visibly reduced her anxiety. Mrs. Johnson, Maria said, sitting beside her on the sofa, I want you to understand one thing. Your body knows how to take care of this baby. Sometimes it just needs a little push to remember. But what if it doesn't work? Then we'll face it together as a family. But we'll fight with all the tools we have, traditional medicine, ancestral knowledge, and a lot of love. Jake had come home from college and watched his mother work with renewed admiration. It was the first time he had seen her apply her knowledge in a life-or-death situation within her own family. Mom, he whispered, can I help? Yes, son. Prepare that olive leaf tea we learned last week. And ask Emily to bring the lavender plants from the garden. The aroma will help Mrs. Johnson relax. Dr. Mark, initially skeptical, began to watch with increasing interest. The pressure of Sarah, which had reached 160 by 110, began to gradually decrease. 2 hours after Maria's arrival, it was at 140 by 95, still high, but in a less dangerous range. How is this possible? Murmured the doctor, checking the equipment again. Doctor, Maria explained respectfully, stress and anxiety drastically raise blood pressure. By reducing these factors through proven natural techniques, we were able to give Sarah's body a chance to balance itself. And the baby? Maria gently placed her hands on Sarah's belly, with the experience of someone who had accompanied hundreds of pregnancies in Louisiana. He is moving more. That's a good sign. Throughout the night, the entire family took turns caring for Sarah. David hardly left her side. Maria constantly monitored the vital signs. Jake prepared the teas in the right doses, and Emily, with her childlike innocence, talked to her mother's belly, telling stories about the plants in the garden. Little brother, Emily said, lying next to Sarah, Aunt Maria has a special little plant that will help you grow strong. It's holy thorn, which protects children. She planted one just for you in our garden. At 5 in the morning, when Dr. Mark arrived to check on Sarah, he found a scene that surprised him. The pressure had stabilized at 130 by 85. Sarah was sleeping peacefully, and the fetal monitor showed regular heartbeats from the baby. Maria, he said, with genuine admiration, I don't know how to explain this scientifically, but it worked. Doctor, science and tradition do not have to be enemies. They can be allies in the fight for life. You saved 2 lives today. Maria smiled, tired but happy. I didn't save them alone. We saved them as a family. Sarah woke up at that moment, feeling better than she had in weeks. How is the baby? Strong and a fighter, just like his mother, Dr. Mark replied. But you will need complete rest for the next few months. And, he hesitated before continuing, I would like Maria to continue overseeing your treatment. Officially, what do you mean? David asked. I want to hire her as a consultant for the hospital for high-risk pregnancies. What I saw here tonight needs to be studied and replicated. Maria was moved. After 5 years away from hospitals, a doctor was officially recognizing the value of her knowledge. Doctor, I accept, but with one condition. What? I want to form an integrative team that includes nurses, doctors, and traditional therapists. If we are going to do this, we will do it right." At that moment, seeing Maria recognized for what she had always been, a true healer, David understood that they had passed the final test. It was not just a matter of business success or social acceptance. It was about family, trust, and the courage to do what is right, even when the whole world doubts. Emily, who had been watching everything with the attentive eyes of a wise child, approached Maria and hugged her. "Aunt Maria, are you going to take care of other moms and babies too?" "Yes, my dear. I will teach other doctors everything my grandma taught me. And will you still be our family?" "Forever, Emily. Forever." 2 years had passed since that dramatic night that forever changed the fate of the Johnson Lopez family. The September morning of 2026 dawned bright in New Orleans, and the Integrative Medicine Center had become a reference not only in Louisiana but throughout the South. The Colonial House on Flower Street now housed 3 floors bustling with activity. On the ground floor, individual consultations took place in rooms equipped with the latest in integrative medicine. The first floor had been transformed into classrooms where Maria, now recognized as Dr. Maria Lopez, an honorary title granted by the University of Louisiana, taught courses for doctors, nurses, and therapists from all over the country. The second floor housed the expanded laboratory and David's administrative office, who had discovered a new passion, managing social projects. The third floor had become a research center in partnership with the university, where traditional treatments were studied scientifically. But the biggest transformation had occurred in the garden. What was once a simple backyard now extended across 3 adjacent lots that David had acquired. The Grandma Maria Medicinal Garden, a tribute to Maria's grandmother, had become a true living museum of medicinal plants, visited daily by students, researchers, and families interested in learning about natural medicine. "Mommy, the little brother is moving," shouted Emily, now 10 years old, running through the garden towards Sarah, who was resting in a hammock under the shade of the century-old mango tree. Sarah, radiant at 40, caressed her 8-month belly. After the traumatic experience of her first high-risk pregnancy, this second pregnancy had gone perfectly under the combined care of traditional medicine and Maria's knowledge. "He is eager to meet his big sister," Sarah said, smiling at Emily, who gently placed her ear on her mother's belly. "Hi, Alex," Emily whispered to the belly. "It's me, your sister. When you are born, I will teach you everything about Aunt Maria's magical plants." Across the garden, David watched the scene with a smile of complete satisfaction. At 44, he had discovered that true success was not measured solely by restored paintings or money earned, but by the relationships built and lives transformed. "Mr. Johnson," said a voice behind him. David turned to find Jake, now 21 and graduated with honors in nursing. The young man wore the white coat of the center with the embroidered name, Jake Thompson, specialist nurse in integrative medicine. "Jake, how was the lecture today?" "Incredible. 20 doctors from public hospitals in New Orleans wanting to implement integrative protocols in their units." Jake radiated the pride of someone who saw dreams becoming reality. "And there's news. The Department of Health approved our project to create 5 integrative medicine hubs in different neighborhoods of the city." David nodded, proud of the young man who had become like a son to him. "And your mother? How did she react to the news?" "She cried," Jake replied, laughing. "She said she never imagined she would be called to advise on public health policies." At that moment, Maria appeared, coming out of one of the classrooms, accompanied by a group of young doctors who listened to her with reverent attention. At 47, she had become one of the leading authorities in integrative medicine in the country, yet she maintained the simplicity and humility that always characterized her. "Doctors," she was saying to the group, "always remember, medicinal plants are not alternatives to medicine. They are complements. Our role is to integrate knowledge, not replace it." "Dr. Maria," a young doctor asked, "how do you manage to reconcile the oral traditions of healers with scientific protocols?" "It's simple," Maria replied, stopping near a patch of lemon balm. "Ancestral wisdom gives us the clues, science provides the proof. My grandmother knew that lemon balm calmed. Today we know it contains compounds that actually reduce anxiety. Knowledge complements, it does not contradict." David approached the group. "Doctors, would you like to see our new research greenhouse?" As David led the visitors, Maria walked over to where Sarah was resting with Emily. The friendship between the two women had deepened far beyond the employer-employee relationship. They were now true sisters, united by motherhood and the challenges they had overcome together. "How are you feeling today?" Maria asked, discreetly checking Sarah's pulse. "Well, thank God. And thanks to you," Sarah replied. "Maria, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "Helen Johnson called me today." "Do you know what she said?" Maria smiled, remembering the woman who had been one of the most critical of her presence in the Johnson household. "That she wants to schedule another appointment? Worse, she wants you to be her daughter's wedding godmother." The two laughed, recalling how it had all begun. Helen, who initially viewed Maria with suspicion, had become one of the center's most loyal patients after natural treatments cured her chronic insomnia. "And do you know what her justification was?" Sarah continued, mimicking her friend's pompous tone. "Maria is the wisest woman I know. I want her to bless my daughter's wedding." "People change," Maria said philosophically. "When prejudice is overcome by results, the heart opens to the truth." Emily, who had been listening to the conversation, lifted her head. "Aunt Maria, are you really going to be a godmother?" "If your mother lends me a beautiful dress," Maria joked. "Lend nothing," Sarah said. "We're going to buy the prettiest one in New Orleans. After all, you deserve it." At that moment, Jake approached carrying an official letter. "Mom, this just arrived for you." Maria opened the envelope with curiosity, and as she read, her eyes filled with tears. "What is it?" Sarah and Emily asked simultaneously. It's from the National Academy of Medicine. They want to grant me the title of honorary member for exceptional services rendered to the integration of traditional medicine and ancestral knowledge in the United States." The silence that followed was one of pure emotion. Sarah got up from the hammock and hugged Maria, both of them crying. "Maria, you deserve this and much more," Sarah said. "You revolutionized the way we see medicine in this country." Emily, not fully understanding the magnitude of the recognition, but sensing it was something important, hugged both women. "Does this mean Aunt Maria is very important?" "It means the whole world recognizes what we already knew," Sarah explained. "That she is special." David came running, having heard the shouts of joy. When he learned the news, he picked Maria up and spun her around, shouting with happiness. "Maria, my God, you did it. You reached where you always deserved to be." "David, stop. They'll think we're crazy," she protested, laughing. "We are crazy with happiness." As they celebrated, other staff members began to gather. The place that had started with just 4 people now employed 20 professionals: doctors, nurses, therapists, herbalists specializing in medicinal plants, and even a research team. "Everyone," David shouted, climbing onto an improvised chair. "Our Dr. Maria just received the highest recognition in American medicine." Applause echoed through the garden, mixed with shouts of joy and congratulations. Maria, visibly emotional, requested silence. "Everyone, this recognition is not just mine. It belongs to all of us, to this family we have built together," she said, her voice choked with emotion. 5 years ago, I was just an unemployed nurse with a controversial past. Today, I represent thousands of healers, folk healers, midwives, and popular therapists who always knew that healing comes from love, respect for nature, and the union of tradition and science. "Speech! Speech!" someone in the crowd shouted. Maria smiled and continued. "I want to especially thank the Johnson family, who taught me that family is not just those who share the same blood, but those who share the same heart. David and Sarah gave me an opportunity when I needed it most, and Emily taught me that a child's love can heal any wound." Emily ran to hug Maria, followed by everyone else. It was a collective, emotional embrace that symbolized the journey everyone had taken. As the sun began to set over New Orleans, painting the sky in golden hues that reflected on the leaves of the medicinal plants, the family gathered on the terrace of the house. David, Sarah, Emily, Maria, Jake, and even little Alex, who was fidgeting in his mother's belly as if he wanted to join the celebration. "Do you know what I think when I look at all this?" David said, gesturing to the center, the garden, the gathered family. "What?" Sarah asked. "That sometimes God's plans are better than ours. If Emily hadn't fallen off the ladder, if Maria hadn't donated blood, if we hadn't faced prejudice, none of this would exist. It's true, Maria agreed. Every difficulty was a seed planted for something greater. Emily, sitting on her mother's lap, looked around, feeling the warmth of love and accomplishment surrounding them. Maria looked at the garden filled with medicinal plants swaying gently in the afternoon breeze. Aunt Maria, when I grow up, I want to be like you. I want to take care of people and plants. And you will be, my dear. You will be even better. Why? Because you will grow up knowing that there is no difference between the medicine of the rich and the medicine of the poor, between the wisdom of a doctor and the wisdom of a grandma. You will grow up knowing that what matters is healing with love. When night fell, and the lights of downtown illuminated the garden like earthly stars, the family remained gathered. There was a sense of completeness, of mission accomplished, but also of new dreams yet to be realized. The Johnson and Lopez Integrative Medicine Center was no longer just a business or a social project. It had become a symbol that it is possible to unite differences, overcome prejudices, and build bridges between seemingly opposing worlds. And at the heart of it all was a simple yet powerful truth. The strongest families are those formed not by blood, but by love, not by convenience, but by choice, not by obligation, but by gratitude. Maria Lopez, the nurse who had lost everything for doing what she believed was right, was now nationally recognized for her knowledge. David Johnson, the skeptical restorer, had learned that restoring human relationships was even more rewarding than restoring works of art. Sarah had discovered that true elite is made up of people of character, regardless of their social background. And Emily grew up knowing that love knows no boundaries of class, color, or social condition. Jake, realizing his dream of graduating in nursing, now carried his mother's legacy to a new generation. And little Alex, still in the womb, was already part of a family that valued both tradition and innovation. That night, when everyone finally settled down, Maria spent a few minutes alone in the garden. She knelt by the lemon balm patch and whispered a prayer of gratitude. Thank you, Grandma. You were right. Those who plant love, harvest family. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the medicinal plants, as if ancestral wisdom approved of the path taken. And in the silence of the New Orleans night, one could almost hear the whisper of the plants growing, lives being healed, and love blossoming without borders. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and if you watched until now, comment, I watched until here, and share your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the final screen. It's going to be very exciting.